About 2 months ago, I went to the animal shelter and found a cat who was literally just calling my name. Now, I'm not really a cat person, I'll be honest. I haven't had the best experience with cats in my life, so I've been a little bit afraid of them. But Tate just turned 2, and I had been thinking that he needed a friend, and I did not want a puppy. I just didn't want the upkeep and maintenance of a dog, like a second dog. And so logically, I just thought, let's get a cat. I've never had one. Why not, right? The urge to go into the shelter was just like so strong one day. And so I went there and I looked through every single cage, and most cats were just like screaming for attention and flaunting and just really wanted to get out. But there was this one cat who was literally just laying there. I almost didn't even see him. He was on the bottom and he was laying down tucked in the corner, and he was making no movements, didn't act like he was interested. But I could just tell, I could see it in his eyes that he was annoyed. Every time the dogs barked, he looked more and more uncomfortable. Something about him just made me want to get a room and meet him. Like I said, I'm not a cat person, so I was really nervous that I was gonna be walking into a cat who was gonna be like attacking me. I mean, granted, I don't think the workers would do that. What reassured me, honestly, is that the worker just picked him up and carried him, and he didn't look like he hated it. So I felt a little bit of reassurance there that at the very least he didn't mind being held. So I sat on the floor with him, and he's just walking around me. He's just trying to scratch his face on my shoes. He let me pet him, and honestly, I just felt pretty safe with him. And after about 5 to 10 minutes, the worker came back in, took him, and said, honestly, he hasn't warmed up like he did with you for anyone else. Like just yesterday, he was with a family and he wouldn't even go near them. So the fact that he was letting you touch him, being right next to you, coming over to you was a good sign. And my husband was a little bit skeptical. He's like, maybe they were just telling you that because they wanted you to take him. But I wanted to believe that they really were serious and that they meant it and that this was a sign. So I get in the car and I call my husband. He doesn't answer. And I'm like, what do I do? Can I get a cat without telling my husband? What should I do here? So I call my mom, ask her what I should do. And I'm telling her everything I just told you. She was like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Just go put a deposit down and you can talk to your husband when you get home and go from there. So put a deposit down. Worst case scenario, if we don't end up wanting this cat, we're just out $20. Not the end of the world, really, especially because you know that money goes towards helping other animals, so it really wasn't going to be a loss. So I marched back in. I said, okay, yeah, I need to put a deposit down on this cat. I feel like I'm going to regret it if I leave here and I don't. What if someone came in that later that day and wanted him? So I put a deposit down, got all approved. During that time, they let me like walk around while they were like doing background checks or whatever they needed to do. I walked back around and I looked at him and I was like, yeah, I think this is gonna be good. So I overnighted a bunch of stuff on Amazon. I needed a cage to be able to take him home, obviously a litter box and all these things. Had to get the essentials. Then 2 days later, I went and picked him up. So we named the cat Oliver, so that's why I'm wearing my Oliver and Company shirt today. And in this video, I kind of want to talk about everything we did to integrate the two and how they're doing now, and just kind of give you a little bit of an update because it's been a really fun two and a half months. And spoiler alert, Tate and Oliver are getting along wonderfully. So we still have the cat and we're very, very happy with this decision that I made on a whim.
Hi, buddy. Hi.
So bringing a cat home to a dog is so different than bringing a puppy or a dog home to a dog. Obviously, we really wanted this to go over well, but I was cautious about it from the very beginning. You just really don't know what type of cat you're gonna get. You don't know the personality. A lot of factors at play that could make this not turn out well. So the first step was to make sure we had a safe space for the cat. I did a ton of research on integrating a cat and a dog, bringing a cat home. There's not a lot of videos, honestly, about bringing a cat home to a dog. It's usually bringing a dog home to a cat. I didn't really have much out there to like watch and everything, so I just kind of crossed my fingers and hoped for the best. What I know worked really well was we had a cage in my office, so we used Tate's extra large dog cage, and that had enough room for the litter box, the food bowls, his little bed thing, and obviously some blankets and toys. So it was very big. It wasn't like it was super small and like the cat felt claustrophobic. It was quite large. I mean, my 80-pound dog could get in it and stand in it and move around. I think the cage was really beneficial for us because it allowed me to put him in there and know, one, he's safe, he has everything he needs, and there's no accident of like the dog getting to him or the cat getting out or anything. I mean, you just gotta read the vibes of both animals and know what they want. And that first day, he did not want to be out of that cage. You could tell he was very scared of everything. Every time I moved, he was like on alert. So that first day, I would not have done it any other way. I would have kept him in that cage no matter what because he was just so scared of every sound, every movement, every noise, every smell, everything. So he really needed a cage that first day. I think throwing him into this room without the cage would have been very overwhelming for him because just the type of cat he is, he's not like skittish, but he's very cautious. One thing I didn't know about cats prior to having a cat was that when they get scared or freaked out, they have a poofy tail. And I didn't know this. And so when my sister told me this, I was like, oh no, I haven't noticed that. And then I looked back at videos, I'm like, his tail was poofed for hours on that first day. I was thinking he just had a poofy tail. I didn't really notice. And so those first few days, his tail was poofing so often, but now it rarely does that unless someone like rings the doorbell or something abnormal. But yeah, it's just interesting, those things that you don't know to pay attention for if you've never had a cat before, and then you look back and you're like, how did I miss that? So apart from having just the cage, we had all of Tate's toys, Tate's bed, a blanket in here next to the cage. I mean, obviously we have a dog. It's gonna smell like a dog when we come in here, but we also wanted to like really make sure he knew that those smells were fine. So we would put the bed next to the cage, and I think that definitely helped. After a whole day together, you could just tell that he was starting to get a little bit more curious, but not in a scared way. I had my door closed, and Tate is out there the whole day sniffing under here and like pawing at it and crying. So it was obvious that there was another animal in the house. And so Oliver would go up to the door and he'd start sniffing and he'd start pawing under there, and they were pawing at each other. That's how they kind of were introduced at first. I could tell that the cat wanted out, and I was like, well, I don't trust anyone yet to be fully out. So next step was to put the cat in the cage and open my door and let the dog come in. What I got from him was that he was very curious about who this dog was and he wanted to see it. And I think he felt more comfortable knowing what he was smelling. It was very helpful to have a dog who knew like sit, stay, leave it, get on your bed, commands like that. So like I said, we had the bed next to the cage. I would just tell Tate, go lay on your bed, lay down and stay. Tate would just lay there and stare at the cat, and the cat would eventually fall asleep, and then the dog would finally fall asleep because this is boring, nothing's happening. We did a few times of doing that where they could see each other through the cage. I could tell that the cat wasn't scared. He would sometimes paw at Tate's paw, he would sniff it, and then after like a day or two of that, I could just tell that Oliver was ready to see more of the house. But at this point, I still, like I said, I wasn't ready to free range everyone. So we put Tate on a leash, a 6-foot leash, and I think we did a day or two of that where anytime the cat wanted to wander around the house, we just had Tate on the leash so that we could kind of control that. Honestly, they did really well. We didn't have any issues, but we were really holding on to Tate and really telling him his commands of leave it and stay and things like that. So we were being really cautious about that introduction. They did a few days of the leash. I think that first time they were on the leash, or the second time or something like that, the cat got on the couch next to Tate, and we were like, okay, the cat is coming up to the dog more often. So this is a good sign. So after that, after seeing that these two don't hate each other and teaching Tate to leave it and not go after the cat if the cat's running away, I decided, well, no time like the present, let's just see what happens. So I started just letting them free range during the day while I was working. I think the worst that happened is a few times Tate has run after the cat and tried to like roughhouse with him, and all it took was like 2 or 3 times of telling Tate no and leave it, you can't do that, and like actually really yelling at him for him to get it into his head that, okay, I can't do that with this thing. I can do it with the other dogs, but I can't do it with the cat. So it didn't really take much to teach Tate because he doesn't like like getting yelled at. We also quickly learned that the cat likes to beg for food, and I think they kind of bonded through their shared love of begging because that was one of the first times we got them to sit next to each other is they were begging for food. So I think it was little things like that where the cat started learning, okay, this dog isn't that scary, and vice versa. So 2.5 months later, they're still doing great. I am so proud of both of them. I feel really lucky that this worked out. I haven't really heard many success stories with this. Like a lot of things you would see online or read about, the cat was always mad or you just dealt with it if they weren't getting along. So I'm really lucky that this worked out. Like I said, growing up, I've never been a cat person, so I really wasn't expecting to get a cat ever in my life. I'm really, really glad we did. I think it was the right move for our family. The boys pretty much spend all day on the couch together. It's really cute, actually. We have our morning routine of Tate getting his food. He always gets an ice cube in the morning, and very quickly, Oliver also decided he would like an ice cube as well. So they both get an ice cube, and they both love it, and once Oliver's done playing with it and licking it, then Tate goes and finishes it for him. So it works out in Tate's benefit. Oliver hasn't hissed or swatted at Tate, and sometimes he deserves it, but Oliver apparently is just not that type of cat. That kind of works out for me too, because he hasn't like bit me or swatted at me either, so he's just not that type of cat apparently. If Oliver gets scared, he just runs and hides under the couch, and I think it really helps that he knows he has a lot of places to run to in this house that the dog can't get to. For the most part, Tate doesn't go after him. The only time he really does is if they both have the zoomies at the same time, and then it's just a matter of telling Tate to chill and leave it, and then everything's fine, or the cat just runs and hides. So someone decides to work it out. The only thing that's really difficult, honestly, is playing with them in the house. Tate gets really jealous, and we haven't had to buy any toys really for the cat except for those like pull feather things that you can swat around. That's the only toy the cat has. Everything else, he plays with Tate's toys. It doesn't matter how small or big the toy is, he will play with a toy that is the same size as him. Anytime Oliver touches or looks at any of Tate's toys, he gets up and takes it from him. He's not used to having to share things, so he's learning that. He's gotten a lot better. He still has progress he can make though. Anytime we want to play with the cat, the dog decides he would like to be played with as well. And sometimes I'll tell him to go on his bed and make him stay there. And then if he stays for a while, he'll go to a treat. So that's kind of his reward for letting us play. Sometimes I'll also just put him in a room and give him a look mat while I play with the cat. I get to make sure that no one's getting trampled on. Or if my husband's here and we each will take an animal. If that's our only hard part about this, I feel like we're doing really well. So far, so good. So I wanted to kind of recap some of my tips for integrating a cat to a dog. I think the most important thing is to have a dog who is well trained first. So if your dog doesn't know sit, stay, go to your bed, leave it, you're gonna have a much harder time, I feel like. Those are like the basic commands, and it's so important for your dog to know those. I think obviously the second part to that is if you are going to a shelter, making sure it's a cat who either has experience with other cat animals or dogs. They will let you know which ones have interacted well with other people or which ones are not the fun ones. They know the cats better than you're gonna know in the 5 to 10 minutes, so just trust their judgment. Obviously each cat is gonna be different, and I feel like that's like the biggest determining factor on if this is gonna go well or not. If you're new to getting a cat like I would make sure you look up the signs of stress and being scared and observing those signs in your cat, because I didn't know any of that. Like I mentioned before, I didn't know about the poofy tail. I had heard about pinned back ears until I really paid attention to the cat and saw when he wasn't stressed, was I actually able to see when he was stressed. So that definitely helps read the room if you know what you're looking for. Anytime the cat was starting to get a little bit too overwhelmed, we would separate them again, and that can kind of help you know like when it's time to let them meet and when it's not. So let them get used to you first and get used to their new room, and maybe even let them have a room or two to explore without the dog around before letting the dog like fully in their world as they're trying to learn a new area. I mean, I feel like all these tips are important, but this one is also very important, is to make sure you take things slow. Bringing a cat home is so different than bringing a dog home. They have a lot more stress and anxieties, and if you rush things, it can really make make things difficult down the line. So just make sure you take things slow, read both of the pets, and check out how each one of them is doing individually as well as when they're together. Each integration is going to be different, but I hope this helped. And if you're looking to get a cat and bring a cat home to your dog, just take it slow and hopefully things will work out. I'm so happy that we got Oliver. He's been such a great addition to our family. And the boys, man, do they just love each other. I mean, I think Oliver likes Tate more than Tate likes Oliver. I think Tate also wants to pretend like he doesn't like Oliver, so he's trying to play it cool and act like he's not interested. But yeah, I think he likes having another friend around, especially when we leave. So that's been our experience bringing a cat home to our dog. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'm happy to help. Have a great rest of your day. Bye!